Thank you, Carol.
Very clear, Carol. Thank you. Legislation designed to target illegal immigrants in Britain is penalising legitimate tenants trying to rent a home. Ben's more information on that.
Yeah, I do. Thanks, guys. Morning to you. Yeah, morning to you too. Yeah, this is the so-called right to rent scheme. It was introduced by the last government back in 2014, and it now puts the onus on landlords and letting agencies to vet the immigration status of everyone that wants to rent a property. But research out today shows that half of landlords are now reluctant to rent to any foreign national, even if they're entitled to be here. One is Kirby in Brighton.
Within the law, they're requiring everyone that rents in the UK that doesn't have a UK passport to provide some documentation. But the issue is that it's a UK law, and in European law, I don't have to provide anything. I just need to provide my marriage certificate and my husband's passport because I'm married to an EU citizen. So I automatically have EU rights within the UK. The real estate agency, about 48 hours before we were supposed to move in, they emailed us and said that they weren't going to be releasing the keys to us, even though we had signed the lease and paid our deposits and paid all the money. And they also said they weren't going to refund us back anything because I couldn't prove that I was legal in the UK. It's stressful enough having to move, but then having someone say to you that you're not legal and we're not renting to you and nobody in the UK is going to rent to you is just heartbreaking.
So that's just one example. Well, Saira Grant is with me. She's from the Joint Council for the Welfare of Immigrants who did this research. Saira, good morning.
Good morning.
So this is essentially sort of landlords throwing out the baby with the bathwater. They're so risk-averse about getting it wrong. They're actually penalising people who have a legitimate right to be here. And that can involve people, that don't have a passport, for example, but are entitled to be here.
Well, that's right. I mean, what our research has shown is that British citizens are really being discriminated against if they don't have a passport. So, you can be white British, the person the landlord wants to rent to, but without a passport, almost half of landlords are refusing you. If you're a British ethnic minority, the stats get worse. So what we've seen is the fear we had at the start of this scheme that it would lead to discrimination against those it wasn't intended to discriminate against. That is what is happening. So
the onus is on who? Is it the tenants to prove their right to be here, or for landlords to make sure they're getting this right? It's probably somewhere in between, I imagine.
Well, it's the landlord who must conduct the check under the scheme. And the landlord must conduct the check for every single prospective tenant. And if he doesn't do so, that landlord could actually be fined up to £3,000 if he rents to an irregular migrant, or even after December, Ben, jailed for up to 5 years. So you can see why landlords are being risk-averse. Yeah,
so what can they do? If they're so worried about those penalties and the government says it wants to clamp down on this, what position do landlords find themselves in? It's very difficult for them.
Absolutely. I mean, landlords are in an impossible position. Landlords are not border guards. They're not immigration officials. And what the scheme is doing, Ben, is it's really dividing people. It's causing burdens on landlords, which they don't deserve, and it's discriminating against tenants in a housing market where there's such shortage.
So what needs to change?
Well, the government has an amazing opportunity right now to abandon this failed experiment. We don't need the right to rent scheme. We don't need this division in our society. But, post-Brexit, it's got the chance to rethink the entire immigration policy. This is a chance for the government to abandon this scheme, abandon the hostile environment, and create a new immigration system that does not punish British citizens and is fair to all those who live here.
But the government says, well, look, the right to rent scheme deters people from staying in the UK when they have no right to do so. You're saying you don't need this scheme. The government says this is vital to protect our borders.
I'm saying it doesn't deter it. That's the point. It has not met its stated aims, which was to deter. According to the government's own figures, only 31 people have been made to leave the country, have been removed from here. 31. These are their figures. The scheme is not proportionate. It is not achieving its stated aims, and in the wake of it, it is causing so much hardship and discrimination for legitimate tenants in the UK.
Yeah, absolutely, and like the one that we heard of there. Saira, it's really good to talk to you. Thanks for explaining all of that. Saira Grant there from the Joint Council for the Welfare